Hello and good day to all our audience from all over. Welcome to today's edition of LATOKEN VCTV, where we tackle major issues and trends that affect us globally. We also use this platform to connect entrepreneurs and startups to investors on our platform. And I'd like to encourage you, if you're a startup anywhere in the world looking for funding, you can easily reach me or any of the LATOKEN team and book a session with us so that you could pitch your project in front of our network of investors. These shows hold 4 times a day and 5 days a week, so there is ample time and space for you to come on the show and pitch your project. Today we'll be dealing with a very interesting topic, and I'm sure a lot of the world will be interested in the evolution of crypto. Our topic today is how will the future of crypto look like? And I'm certain our guests have something to say about this. And today with me, I have my colleague, Amit. Amit, would you introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Thank you, Nathaniel, for your brief introduction. My name is Amit Das. I work as a listings manager with LATOKEN, and I'm connecting from India, and I'm looking forward for today's topic. It is a very interesting topic of the future of how the crypto world will be looking like from now on, taking into the account that a lot of governments are making moves regarding their central bank digital currencies. So we would like to hear their insights from all our panel member. I hope it will be a very insightful session for you all, guys. Over to you, Nathaniel. Thank you.
Thanks, Amit, for that. And just before I go ahead to introduce our panel today, I'd like to encourage everyone viewing us on LinkedIn, Facebook, to go on and send their messages. We can view those messages live and respond to questions that are relevant. And this is an opportunity for the audience and viewers to participate and give us feedback. And I think I'll go next to our panel. And Mihai, would you introduce yourself? Tell us a bit about yourself, what you do, and your passion. Yeah, just go ahead.
Sure. I've been working in crypto since the crazy ICO days of 2017, and I'm now pretty amazed to see the rest of the Robinhood army starting to feel the way we did when Bitcoin was initially soaring. I invested in a lot of different tokens. Primarily, I'm working right now, supporting a couple of public companies, and I've worked for BNP Paribas, Unilever, and some of these really major institutions, as well as helping companies doing interoperability, scaling, and just good old meme coins because they're so much fun.
Awesome. You come with a lot of experience and insights from the crypto world, and I look forward to hear every bit of it. And next, Richard, give us a bit about yourself, what you do, and what you're going to give us today.
You're talking to me?
Yes, Richard. Yes, Richard, please.
Okay. I heard Richard, so I was waiting for some Richard to start.
Oh, sorry. Okay, Rishabh.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm working in the crypto industry from the last 3 years almost, working with a fund based out of Dubai, which is investing into early and growth stage companies. We invest in startups and focusing mostly on crypto. But yes, our portfolio is focusing more majorly on the fintech side, and coming from a background which I understand finance, and then merging it with crypto gives a solution which is creating a lot of solutions for the problems that are being faced today. At the moment, we are also so I'm working with ONX. ONX is a family office, and at the moment we are working with TD5 acceleration program to invest in early stage DeFi ventures and then helping them in scaling up. So as we like to call it, that it's not only the money that we say that money that we provide, it's the blood and sweat that we put in to make that company grow to the scale they imagine it to be. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for that intro. Next, we go to David. I know David is not your first time on LATOKEN VCT, but just give us a bit more about yourself.
Thanks, Nathaniel. Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for having me on. Some familiar faces on the panel, so that's cool. So yeah, just a quick synopsis. I have come from a very traditional background. I started off many years ago in corporate foreign exchange, and then I moved into the fund business, and I was part of a fund in different structures through to fund management towards the back end of the century, and then into the beginning of 2000s, up to 2008, invested in a lot of early startups through private placements and initial public offerings. I came back to the UK because this was overseas, working in the US and other offshore places such as Panama City, and got involved with open source technology as a commercial director and owner or part owner of a company called Linux IT around 10 years or so ago. That was bringing the likes of Red Hat and SUSE and other open source service providing companies into the blue chip financial space to try and if you like, propagate the value of open source technologies over proprietary technologies. And that kind of took me quite naturally into the crypto space when that became a bit more aware. So I've been quite active in this space, working in a number of different places, created our own investment fund, 08 Capital, a number of years ago, invested in a number of different projects. More recently working on the investment side, but also on the incubation side with TDFi, with Rishabh and some of the other guys over there in Asia. And we finished our first cohort before Christmas, and actively really engaging in new fintech type companies that have what we believe as industry changing potential. So yeah, thanks for having me in, and interested in finding out more about other people's opinions and talking about the high level topics of today.
Yeah. Thank you very much, David. Interesting insights, interesting experience. And for the sake of our audience and for the sake of those watching us from all over the world, I'd like to start from the bare basic. I mean, everybody's talking about crypto like it's the next money, it's the next financial thing. And what happens to our paper money? What's the big deal? I mean, what now happens to all the money we have in the bank? And this goes for those in developed and developing countries, especially it's a threat to financial institutions all over the world. So my own take is, what would you tell the audience is the difference between paper money and digital money? Let us start there, Mihai, and break it down for the audience. And what's the difference and what makes each unique? Sorry, your audio seems to be mute. Maybe you could check.
Sorry, I'm not really old enough to remember paper money. I mean, since I was a kid, everything that I've seen has been numbers on some screen or other, whether it's on an ATM or whatnot. I don't really feel like that's a transition. I think the average customer doesn't really consider that the infrastructure of all top 100 banks is run by a company that was later bought by Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and that there's a monopoly there in terms of managing back-end transactions. I don't think anybody cares about Swift. I really, other than, buying drugs or something other illicit weird thing, like paper money is almost gross these days. And I think that's been the case for the last 10 years. Like it's weird when people say cash only, and there's definitely places like that. I remember being in the Berlin airport, and my suitcases were over the weight limit, and the airport was like, "Oh, we're cash only," and I was just shocked. Like I felt like I had traveled back to the 1960s. Like, what do you mean cash only? I don't think anybody in my generation, and I'm 35, is old enough to to remember paper money as something that was used for anything other than maybe your parents would give you $5 as a kid to like buy lunch, but no one serious has used paper money in 50 years.
I see. And that's while that is your own reality, for some parts of the world, there is still a struggle between the paper money and the digital money. And it's interesting to hear your perspective. Rishabh, please, the difference between paper money and digital money, what do you think about that, the evolution of money, so to say?
uh, Again, I mean, I'm even younger than Mihal, so probably I don't even remember talking about paper money. If he, yeah, I mean, jokes apart, I mean, I'll not go by the textbook definition of a paper money versus digital money, because that's available, and that really doesn't solve the question. I think the question that you were trying to ask here, and try to the information that you're trying to share with the audience, is that what was the reason that with having paper money, but still having paper money, but then what was the reason that the need of this digital money came up, right? I think
Exactly.
that's what you're trying
Yeah.
to probably extract from this question. So if you go back, like, I mean, let's just go not too far back, just 10 years back, when we were too much engaged, and when we were going through all of this 2008 financial crisis, and the banks were plunging. There was one person who was taking care of the money hard earned by the people. The authority, the central authority, the so-called centralized authority, was responsible, or was so-called held responsible, or rather was taking advantage of the hard earned money by the common man like me, like me and I mean, like the common man, that made it difficult for them to keep a control over their money. And that's where the digital money came in. And that's where someone like Satoshi Nakamoto realized that it's a time when there has to be there like if you talk about today, the population today, there is 2 billion of population that does not have any access to banking services. And out of 7 billion, like, we're talking about more than 35% of the population that does not have access to these banking services. And even after having paper money for decades, right? But then, so there was but so what was the reason that these people couldn't people from the third world, the so-called third world, that we like, that that is the so-called jargon today, and they do not have the access to banking, and then they arise a need of having a currency which is not dependent on any authority. So that is not present in physical form. It's present online. It's present in the form of codes, and there is no authority to tell that let's go and print money today. Let's go and make someone rich and the poor even poorer. And that's where the need of digital currency came in, where I, sitting in the farthest and remotest area of my country, of let's say, of let's talk about Asia. So like, talking about India, the remotest village of India, I can go and have access to my wallets, and I can have access to my money. I don't have to travel to a bank to withdraw the money, to deposit the money. I don't have to believe in the self-proclaimed leaders, and which tells us and say, okay, we will take care of your money, you give us your money. And that's the difference between digital money and the paper money. There is no central authority. There is no authority to say, okay, will be give us your money. You are the owner of your money. You do what you want to do with it, and you do not have to depend, or rather you do not have to face any consequence because of someone else's actions, just like we faced in 2008. So yeah, that I would with that I would like to summarize my answer with this.
Interesting. Yeah, obviously interesting, because now it seems like there really is no difference between paper money and digital money. Money is money. But what has changed is the authority that manages or collects these monies, and it's important, like you said, it frees the user from the abuse, institutional abuse of the system, and protects against inflation, so to say. And I think it is one of the few things that has led to the emergence of crypto assets. And this is where I want to ask David, um, what other factors do you believe led to the emergence of crypto assets? Was it just as an act of rebellion against central banks and central authorities, or was it born by a necessity, like Rishabh said, to reach the unbanked? I mean, what other factors do you feel contributed to this?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, this is a conversation in itself, but there's a saying that the history doesn't predict the future, but it's a good indicator. And so, if you go back, and I'm a student of historical information, particularly when it comes to economics, macro, micro, social economics, and things like that. And so we go through cycles. We go through cycles in terms of global dominance around currencies, and these cycles typically last a certain period of time. And we've been going through a cycle where the US dollar is the global dominant currency. And there's periods in time where you went back to the 60s and the evolution of the petrodollar, where in essence the US, through the central banks and governance, agreed with third world countries, or the vast majority of every country in the world, that to purchase petrol, gas, diesel, oil, they'd have to use the US dollar as the currency. And what you're doing there, you're actually forcing people and controlling people through a financial mechanism. And every currency, global currency that's ever lived, if you go back to the original, where gold was the original currency, that's how people traded. It was the store of value. If you look at all of those, they all failed ultimately at the end through massive amounts of manipulation and huge inflation in terms of oversupply. So I would recommend anybody that really wants to know more about this type of subject, they do some research. And the best place to start is read a book by G. Edward Griffin, The Creature of Jekyll Island. And it talks about the creation of the Federal Reserve, which is basically a banking cartel. So, one thing big businesses don't like is competition. So what they typically do when they're, if the guy was on the street and he was selling apples and he was the only guy selling apples, he has a monopoly. If somebody comes along and says, hey, I can sell apples, how does he sell his apples? Above the fact that they might taste slightly differently, ultimately it comes down to price. And that's what happens. You then force pricing down, and that's called competition. Banks don't like that. So ultimately what they do is they come together in like a cabal, or whatever you want to call it, a group, and they then fix prices. So this is what we're seeing. We're seeing a group of very high-level banks, financial institutions, which control governments through central banks. And they're controlling us, the people, by dictating how money is spent. So fractional banking is an example. People don't understand how fractional banking works. It means if you put £1 million in a bank, the banks can then lend out 9 times more money from that initial money. But that's called usury. Ultimately, you can't make something out of nothing. So this is a natural evolution process where that is no longer working. It can't continue. And so people are saying, how do we change that? And it's taking away the control of these large entities that are destroying the fabric of what money even means. It's fairly irrelevant whether it's digital or cash or whatever. It's just that we've emerged into a new technology. The fundamental thing here is, who controls your money on a digital wallet? You do, unless it's through a centralized exchange. But fundamentally, it's about taking people's control back from having no control over your money. So a bank can take your money and switch you off. You're a slave. They can't do that with digital money, other than literally cutting off all the electricity, which they're not going to do because that would affect the whole world. So for me, it's a much bigger question than just the practicalities of whether I give somebody a piece of paper or whether I actually pay somebody with a digital transaction.
Wow, interesting. And it's basically the same thing, an act of rebellion that has been enabled by blockchain technology. And I think that for many people, everybody wants to make sure that they hold on to their assets and, leave it out of the control of inflation and all this kind of stuff. But my question to you again is that we know money is an exchange of value. How do digital assets or crypto assets become an exchange of value? How do I know the value of one Bitcoin or one Ethereum? Let's say if it's not against the US dollar, how do I know its worth, its value? And it's a question I get asked. A lot of people say it's speculation, it's based on this and all that. Maybe the audience will want to understand better the indices that create value in crypto assets. And David, would you take that?
Yeah, so I mean, of course, speculation comes into this, but also fundamentals. So, CZ actually put something out on Twitter the other day, and he said, "Don't invest in assets that have a uncontrolled supply, because the only person that's going to win that game is the supplier. You have to invest in things that have limited supply. So think that through. Ultimately, what's the fundamental purpose of fiat money? It's for transactional purposes, and that's why there's an unlimited supply. Because if you didn't have an unlimited supply, they wouldn't be functional because no one would spend them. So if you look at the cryptocurrency market, it was born out of the fact that speculation, but nonetheless, there was a limited amount of supply. And so therefore, that gives you the feeling that actually this is an asset that's worth keeping because there's only so many of them. Now we're moving from that kind of, I believe, ethos, because we're now as a market slowly starting to transition into more of a technology-led value proposition. So Bitcoin and a lot of these other original like projects that were born out of literally people thinking, hey, my money is being devalued. Now, if you look at the US dollar and over a 30 or 40 year period, it's devalued like 90+% in terms of its buying power. Wow. So that money staying in the bank is losing tremendous value. Where do you put your money now? So if you look at something like Bitcoin historically, the first perception of anybody that saw Bitcoin when it became more than just a fun kind of hobbyist type of thing was there's only 21 million of these, and actually with just natural transactions and things like that, some of this is going to be burnt, some of it's going to be lost. There's a halving mechanism in terms of rewards. It makes no sense whatsoever not to put some money in that, because if I'm losing percentages of my natural physical fiat money on a yearly basis, then with this, what's the worst that's going to happen? So I think from that perspective, it was a pure speculation play. Now we're actually looking at a situation where the major people within technology, the major people within financial institutions and governance are starting to realize that actually, because we're moving to a more of a digital, if you like, society, they have to interact with that. So for me, it's all about the supply on a speculative level. And also, we're now moving, I believe, into the next iteration after this bull run, which could be another year or a couple of years, I don't know. I think the next stage would be more based upon how people can use it. How are people able to purchase and transact with one another without having to go through that third party, that bank, who can control and take a piece of their transaction.
Super. Thanks for the insight. I'm sure the audience got something from that. Mihai, what is your take on what makes crypto assets special, what makes it valuable, and do we see this value increasing down the years, or will people trust it less and say, you know what, let me stick with what I know?
I just want to respond to the point about the Federal Reserve first, because
Yeah,
between calling it a cabal and calling it something that runs global government, that's you're dipping into conspiracy theories, mostly from the 40s, that have a lot of intellectual history and Nazi white supremacy. It's all the Jewish cabal controlling everything. But no, the Federal Reserve does not have the power to control monetary supply when it can print a trillion or two here and there, maybe, and it can't even outright print money, and there's $650 trillion of derivatives. The dollar-backed assets are not the dollar. It's a very, very different field. And the second thing is, when it comes to crypto, I think that considering that Bitcoin has no institutional players, that there aren't large coordinated groups, and I don't mean large in terms of numbers of people, I mean large in terms of amount of wealth that can move the price of Bitcoin. For anyone that's worked OTC, you're seeing these deals come in where somebody is going to be selling $1 billion worth of Bitcoin on the open market to crash the price. Well, at the same time, they're buying $5 billion worth of Bitcoin on the closed market, right? Just from other major whales, because they're actually long. And they want to make sure that they're able to make that $5 billion purchase at a price that suits them. That is no different in any way whatsoever than what hedge funds have been doing for years. And there's competition there. There's been competition amongst those funds as long as they've existed. However, one thing that they are in agreement with is that the standard person just have no part to play. I mean, you're not an accredited investor. You don't make $1 million. How dare you try to play this sport of kicks? And I think that's really where it comes in. And finally, just to the point of Bitcoin as a unintermediated source of value. Bitcoin has a foundation. Bitcoin has code that is updated. Bitcoin is something that evolves and that is controlled by a group of people who can, in fact, manipulate the code. That has happened numerous times. One thing that hasn't is Dogecoin. Dogecoin is the original Bitcoin code, copied and pasted in Comic Sans as a joke. And it has maintained itself as a pure retail product because of the pure and utter stupidity of its value proposition. It actually has the most close representation to the original values of Satoshi Nakamoto, more than Craig Wright's BSV. And I'll finish my point by quoting Elon Musk from last night on Clubhouse. I find it oftentimes the most ironic and entertaining outcome is most likely. And to me, the most entertaining outcome would be Dogecoin becoming the new global Earth currency. And I like that because it's stupid, but stupid is often true.
Interesting insight. I mean, I don't think I could catch all of it, but I caught a bit to know that it's like all parties trying to have an edge over each other. Rishabh, what do you think is happening in the crypto space now? What do you think will happen in 5 years' time, based on the everybody trying to gain control over their values, their assets, and all that? What do you think will play out in the next 5 years when it comes to crypto adoption and in both institutional settings and in the private settings?
So, to be very honest, Nathaniel, from no understanding or no information about blockchain, and to standing today with more than 6,000 crypto assets in the market, right? It's just 10 years, and it feels like it's a whole decade, it's a whole century. It's a paradigm shift from a way of governance to a different way of governance. So I'm sorry, I won't be able to answer the question that what will be the case 5 years down the line, because 5 years seems like 50 years in crypto. 50 years in a traditional world is 5 years in crypto. So I mean,
Okay.
there would be there would be so much innovations that I can't even imagine of right at the moment. But definitely, talking about the adoption. So up till now, in this bull run that we see, we saw the last bull run in 2017, 2018. We saw how markets were volatile, and you see the markets today. There's a difference that has been observed, right? The last bull run was just speculation, no utility, not as such, not utility per se in the, I mean, uh, which was adopted, which has a mass adoption. But today, when we see the crypto assets have a utility, the prices are sustaining. Talking about Ethereum, the number of dapps built on Ethereum have been increasing with DeFi coming into the ecosystem. These dapps building have multiplied. The number of active users of wallets of these applications are growing every day as we talk. I mean, there are products being built in the ecosystem, which, and some of them, like I'm personally working on it, like cash fights, bringing retail audience to the crypto ecosystem, connecting the retail market. So as I see from an investor's perspective, from a perspective of being a participant of this ecosystem, in the next 2 to 3 years, we'll be seeing a lot of adoption happening, and that also adoption will be leading to a decrease in volatility of the prices. Markets might not be reacting to a news in a way that they were reacting to like 1 year back or 2 years back. The volatility will decrease. More people would be knowing. So even if you see the number of, let's talk about some numbers. The number of increase in wallets have has been seen an approximate CAGR of 30%, 35% quarterly. The number of people using DeFi applications have grown from few hundred users to few tens of thousands, few 100,000. From from a white paper based product, from a white paper based investment to a product based investment. So how a paradigm shift has happened. You talk to the investors, when you talk to them this, and you ask them what was your basis of due diligence when you used to invest in crypto assets 3 years back, then their first go to answer is that they would read some white paper, they would, okay, they see what's the market speculation look like, and they go and invest. But when we talk to an investor today, and you ask them what's that one thing that has changed, now they ask for the product. Now they ask, what stage of product are you in? Have you built the product? Is the alpha out? Is the beta out? And the reason this question has changed is that because now the adoption has increased. Now an investor would know that if the product is out, its reaction, how the product is reacting or is appealing to the audience, will define the future. Not in like, I'm not talking about a pump and dump future. I'm talking about a sustainable future. I'm talking about a future where the token becomes the currency of that platform, the utility token of that platform, and that platform is being adopted globally, and the people are using that platform to make their transactions, to make the remittances, to buy their dairy products, to buy it from their bread and butter to their to their mobile phones, and then they're
Exactly.
using this whole ecosystem. That's the kind of future I see for the crypto assets in terms of adoption. And in terms of prices, I believe that now we'll be seeing the days of the markets where the prices will be less volatile. Yes. Yeah, thank you.
I mean, very, very interesting there. You see more adoption, you see more institutional acceptance of these crypto assets, and then you see more people using it. Now, do you think that in all this space, with over 4,000, or like you said, 6,000 digital assets, will any one, single one, or a few dominate the market? Mihai was just talking about Dogecoin that Elon Musk started. What do you think? Do you think everybody will restrict themselves to a few digital currencies, or that it will just be whatever is applicable by the vendor or by the user? What do you think?
So
Look,
you're talking
sorry.
about talking or talking
Sorry, Rishabh. No, let me start with Rishabh. I'll come to Mihai.
You're okay. I'll answer first. Sorry, Mihai. I think yeah. So in terms of, I don't have any particular set of coins that I would like to recommend here, and I would like to very clearly say and state here that any of the opinions that I have is a personal opinion. It is not a financial advice. Please do not take it as a financial advice. Please do your own research before you go into the market and invest. It's just my own personal opinion, which I would like to share here. Apart from the whole crypto asset, although there are more than 6,000 coins that have emerged, but out of the 6,000, there are a lot of scams. So beware of them. These are the people who do not have anything with them. They just have few 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 people who believe in pump and dump, and then they just run away from the market. There are certain asset classes which I personally believe in. Bitcoin, as a matter of fact, is the topmost one. It's the new gold. Today, if you talk to a millennial, they were I myself have a lot of friends, who have become professionals, who have started saving their money. So I ask them that, what is the asset class that you're using to save your money and to build your wealth? Earlier, the answer was gold. Now today, the answer is Bitcoin. The reason is, again, fundamentally limited supply of the token makes it unique and makes it appreciating in value. Then if you talk about the for the utility purpose, Ethereum, as a matter of fact, the more apps that are being built on that, the more decentralized sorry, the more decentralized applications that are being built on Ethereum today, the more value it creates for the intrinsic value. In the traditional world, we call them intrinsic value of any asset class or any stock price. That is defined by the cash flows. That is
Sorry
defined by the
about
revenue.
that.
Sorry, that is defined by the revenue and earnings. Similarly, for crypto, I think asset classes like Ethereum, assets like Uniswap, again, a complete innovative solution that has emerged, taking away the power from the centralized exchanges. So
Hmm.
these are certain classes that I personally believe have a huge have way to go in the future.
Okay, cool, cool. Awesome. Wonderful. I think I'll go next to Mihai. Um, Hello, Mihai. Are
Hey,
you there? Yeah,
yeah,
cool.
I'm here.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to come back to you. Sorry about the mix-up earlier. What do you think about the volatility? The Wall
So
Street versus yeah.
I'm gonna go right out and say this: that this is financial advice. I am I did take my FINRA exams, and
Okay.
you never see a single asset taking over dominion over the entire thing. That's not how assets work. You're not going to end up with, a single stock ruling everything, no matter which cyberpunk dystopia that you believe in. That's not a thing that's going to happen. So I think anyone that says, like Bitcoin maximalists in particular, right? Like, oh, this is going to take over everything. No, you're wrong. Just no. Gold is a crappy standard because it's deflationary, and inflation has a lot of value, right? In the same way, Bitcoin is a crappy standard for everything because it's deflationary. I think these assets have their place, right? They're a hedge against inflation, etc. But inflation is a good thing. Economics is not a zero sum game; it's a positive sum game. We have more things. There's a lot to be said about fundamental value of Ethereum, and I emphatically agree with that. However, that's ignoring that next year something's going to come out that's better and that's really going to take over the market. I think we've seen that with Polkadot this year. We've seen that with Aave. We're seeing that with layer 2 solutions on ETH. But furthermore, the level of creativity and usefulness that we're getting is still just incredibly limited, quite frankly. I mean, this is still such a niche field, right? And to go back to what my colleague was saying about kind of monetary policy and the the reserve ratio and stuff like that, we're finally starting to see that in the DeFi space with wrapped BTC, with wrapped ETH, and soon that's you're seeing the wrapped BTC starting to have different value, right? And we've also seen the same thing with gold, wherein the paper gold is somewhere around 100 times the value of the physical gold that's around. Is that real gold? I mean, what is real, right? That goes back to the original question you were asking about, what is paper money? So in terms of the future, I think what's happening with GME, what happened with Robinhood blocking Doge because it was a meme, and then the volume going from $100,000 a day to $3.5 billion a day in trading volume. Those are the real kind of signals you're looking for retail participation. Is vast increases in volume, but that's not anywhere near sustainable. At the end of the day, I think something like the dollar is almost akin to English. It's a language. It's a peg of value that we point at, but there aren't $650 trillion. There aren't. There's that in dollar denominated assets, but that is not the same thing as dollars. And you see that because over the last year, we've seen 40% of all dollars in existence getting printed, and yet inflation is 2%. Why? Well, because that was money that was sent to prop up failing commercial mortgage-backed securities and residential mortgage-backed securities to prevent something like what happened in 2008, which means that they took about $1 trillion and just threw it in the bin that was currently on fire. So a lot of that is never going to make it in the real economy. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because we've seen the consequences of these assets collapsing, even though they're not that M1, cash, debit accounts, including the reserve ratio, monetary supply. They're M2, they're M3. They're to a level of derivation where you get not just 100-fold, you're getting 10,000-fold the amount of money that you would otherwise be seeing in the world economy. And I think the same thing is going to happen in crypto, because history, it may not repeat, but it sure does rhyme.
Wonderful. I think it was David that said something earlier about the world moving in cycles and cycles. And I didn't forget, and I want to go back to David now and ask him, what does he think about the long-term prospect of crypto and its sustainability in government, in commerce, and all that? I mean, Rishabh is pretty optimistic that in a few years' time we'll see its adoption, merchants will come in, and eventually it will thrive. David, from your experience, from the beginning days to these days, you've seen it evolve, you've seen different technologies come out of it. What are you hopeful or mindful of in the crypto space? Will it stay? Will it go?
Yeah, so I mean, okay, there's two things here. So, the crypto ecosystem was born out of a different type of currency, a transaction of value, and that was independent, or at least tried to be independent of the traditional financial systems. Now we're seeing that it's evolved into more of a technology, and of course, if you look at traditional technologies, and I worked in the proprietary side, where in essence people license everything, and then you have to pay to have access to that. And then I worked for Linux IT for a number of years as an open source provider, and so I saw the difference in terms of people being able to have free access to code and then create that and have no barrier other than their own intellect and people's adoption. And that's what fundamentally cryptocurrency and blockchain was how that started and how it's evolved to today. But the reality is, if you want to go into a deep and meaningful, financial institutions, financial governance is managed by governments and large corporations. And therefore, for those people, that's always about how do they provide the best value for themselves and keeping control. I've never ever been involved or have known of a government that gives back once they've taken some control of something or management of it. They don't give that control back very, very rarely. So I think there's a school of thought in terms of, are the people waking up to a realization that they don't need someone to tell them what to do every day. There's some people that love being told what to do. You know, I'm not a big purveyor of watching mainstream media because they tell everybody the same thing, and they want everybody to kind of keep this natural order of things, which is, you know, ultimately it's indiscriminate, and most people, the spread of wealth is wrong. So for me, I think this is about, you know, are people about to wake up? Are people waking up from the reality that they can actually make decisions for themselves? Fundamentally, we're creatures of wanting to speculate, because that's how we've kind of lived. So there's an argument that as long as there's speculation and there's ability to make large sums of money through speculation, then the market will continue in that vein. And then other people will start to look at other things like technology. How does this impact and influence my life in a positive way? So I think it's fair to say that right now we can honestly look at cryptocurrency and blockchain, and we can see value propositions about using certain types of those technologies. We can see the value of being able to transact from the US to 12,000 miles away in another part of the world and have payment sent within seconds, right? So that is useful, irrespective of whether that value proposition is helping you make money. It's helping you to live your life in a productive way. You know, that's something that we've not seen historically. So I think for me, it's less about what do I think is going to happen. I think it's more about, look, human beings are different. You know, we're completely separate. We're completely new, totally unique in terms of how we're made up, how we think. And yet ultimately, the beauty of that is, who knows what the future will hold, other than the fact in the here and now, there's definitely a move away from traditional investment vehicles such as physical gold, which has always been really a store of value against economic difficulties in terms of, you know, devaluations of currencies. And we know most currencies have been devaluing. If you look at cryptocurrencies purely as a speculation, that will continue because people are speculating all the time. That's what the markets are. They're speculation vehicles. People speculate all the time. If you own a mortgage, if you have any form of collateral against you, that's more most likely to be traded on the stock market, you know. So for me, I'm less worried about will there be one to rule them all. Of course not, because human nature is that not everyone likes to do the same thing. So I see that there will be a continuation of new cryptocurrencies that will be flag bearing for, this is a new best way to transact, quicker, cheaper, more effective. And people will, some will fail, most will fail, some will be taken on for different reasons. But yeah, I'm excited because if you look at just 2 or 3 years ago, the value and the improvement in terms of most of these technologies, even if it's from a payment, P2P payment process, is way more advanced than it was before. That will continue. I think the difference here is, when will this collide with the traditional mainstream system? And that has to happen. You know, that has to happen for mainstream adoption if we want that to take over from traditional. But I don't see that happening because companies want sovereignty. We've seen that over the last 3, 4, 5 years, you know, in different countries. People want to make choices for themselves. They want sovereignty, despite the fact that, you know, there's a beautiful, I mean, communism in principle is wonderful, but in practice, these things hardly ever work. It's basically people being told what to do. And I guarantee you, there's not many people I know that enjoy being told what to do. They like telling people what to do, most people, but they don't like being told what to do. So I think that's going to continue. And so I think we're into very interesting times. and I'm interested to see what happens over the next few years. But it's certainly not going to be boring.
Oh, surely, surely, definitely. It's not going to be boring. I think we've come to the close to the end, and any last words, David, just before, since you just come, any last words? Just a few seconds. Let me.
Yeah. So
Let's.
listen, if you're in this space, you're a speculator, whether you like that or not. Typically, enjoy it, and enjoy it for as long as it lasts. Be sensible. Ultimately, I'm in this space for two reasons. The first, because I really, really enjoy it, and secondly, for me, I take enjoyment from helping to give people or work with people to give them, if you like, fulfilling dreams, right? Fulfilling their hopes and aspirations. So, for me, I hope that people take advantage of this to build themselves financial independence and freedom, which hopefully will give them the ability to do what really makes them happy in their lives, whatever their passions are, away from financial burden. So for me, I hope that as many people as possible have the opportunity to succeed in that venture without getting overly focused on greed, because that's not a positive thing for you. And then use something positive. Take that and do something that you feel passionate about, happy. And then from that base of strength, do something good for humanity.
For humanity, not for self, but for humanity. Rishabh, give the audience something to go with, something that they will not forget.
Uh, Actually, I just had one thought in mind, and David already spoke about that. If you're in this space, you are a speculator. You know, make yourself believe, make your console yourself by saying that I'm evaluating the assets and I'm finding the value, the true value. You're not doing that. You're just speculating. And it's the best is to enjoy. Like when I joined this space, I was intrigued by the work it was doing. It was so intriguing. It's every day you're learning a new thing. Just try to explore as much as you can in the world of blockchain, in the world of crypto. Stay away from scams. Do not fall in for greed. That nothing can make you rich overnight. You have to put your efforts and work hard. So just don't fall for the scams, because those scams will not make you rich, but they will definitely not only make you poor, but also keep you away from the ecosystem, because you will now be fearful. So keep yourself, do your research, and just follow the ecosystem closely, understand what is happening, and then put your money in this. Yeah, that's it.
Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you,
Both.
BCTV, for having me here. It was great talking to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rishabh. Both you and David have advocated for much more financial intelligence or crypto intelligence before going into whatever investment or backing up. But I'm interested to hear the last word from Mihai, because I know you are here and there, and I'd like to hear your last word.
Yeah, so I have a degree in economics from Harvard, and this year has taught me that everything that I learned in school was wrong. I've seen Uniswap do an airdrop of something like $600 million, and then their token went up. So much for the supply rises and the price falls. Same thing that I was like saying earlier about inflation. To me, I think the most important thing I can leave anyone with is that there are three things that you can actually observe in the world, and those are physical matter, time, and human behavior. And everything that you're observing and experiencing is a mixture of those three things. I'm in an Airbnb, and it doesn't, this looks crappy from this angle, but it's a $2 million house because on the other side there's a window to a lot of mountains, and that's in demand. But I could be in somewhere that's, a $50,000 house, somewhere in Nigeria with just as beautiful of a background. And it's your lived experience is who you surround yourself with, is who you trust. Don't put money above lived experience. Don't put money above anything except, to trust the time that you spend. Love the loved ones that you're lucky enough to have. put value in friends, because that's what brought me to this field, is having fun with friends. And sometimes I busted my face open, and sometimes I made more money than, I previously needed. Sometimes I lost that money right after. But it's the value of the community. That's why it's memes that make for a Fortune 500 company out of a defunct game store. It's the community that's much more important than anything else. And I really want everyone to just get sucked into a community of people they love. And if you feel alone, if you feel isolated, if you feel like COVID has dealt you a bad hand,
Yep.
reach out to others who feel the same way, because you will find friends.
Thank you very much, Mihai. I
Very
mean,
very
you
strong
have
message.
got, yeah,
Very
very,
much.
very strong message. I mean, another level of self-awareness, another level of insight. Don't just do it for the money, do it for something bigger. Do it for love, do it for the community, do it for progress. And now we've come to the end of today's topic on the future of crypto. And I want to thank each and every one of you, David, Rishabh, Mihai, with your insights. I mean, awesome. And I know that you guys will be coming around very soon. And to the audience out there, I want to encourage you guys, startups out there, entrepreneurs out there, if you have a project that you are looking to fund, or you can reach out to me or to any one of our team and request a pitching session, and we'll put you in front of audience. We'll put you in front of audience that will support your project. And we have hundreds of them looking to fund projects. And please reach out to our team. I'm sure most of them will be on LinkedIn, on social media. Add them up, add Rishabh up, add Mihai up, and David up. And we definitely will be looking forward to hosting you in a few minutes or hours and we will definitely have another topic, exciting topic to keep you glued. So until next time, guys, thank you for watching and see you next
Bye
time.
bye.
Yeah,
Bye bye.
awesome.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you.